Hello, my name's Mark Palmer and I run a part of the course. The section that I run is called Looking Around Corners, and it's talking about how you innovate in a mutating world. You've no doubt had lots of people tell you all sorts of things. It's gone from creative to content, it's a digital world, big data, mobile and everything else. And that's great, and everybody will sell you change. But what most people want to do is deal with it, and it doesn't come nicely. So things mutate. Just to explain, I run a change consultancy. It's called Maverick Planet. And the simple thing that I do is I deal with two things. People want new possibilities, but there's an overwhelming inertia. So much as everybody wants change, the reality is change is not something that we're very comfortable with. Therefore, the issue that I deal with is rather than forcing change, is help to remove inertia. And I do that principally by using facilitation. And that's lots of the techniques I talk people through. And I do that for people at the moment like Google, The Economist, I've done stuff for Kraft, lots and lots of companies, and in quite a rapid piece of time. Let me give you an example of what the issue is. One of the key issues about inertia is that people tend to, for example, see the world from where they are. This is a guy called Steve Ballmer. He was chief exec of Microsoft. And when he left Microsoft, I think the share price went up, which is not a great thing as a chief exec, by something like 5%. Given he owned lots of shares, it's probably quite good for him when he's leaving. But he actually said when the iPhone came out, and I'll show you a clip, he was asked, what did he think when the iPhone first came out, what he thought? And he went, $500 for an iPhone? And it doesn't even have a keyboard? That's a very expensive mobile phone.
Steve, let me ask you about the iPhone and the Zune, if I may. The Zune was getting some traction, and Steve Jobs goes to Macworld and he pulls out this iPhone. What was your first reaction when you saw that?
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine.
2 points to notice there. The first off, he assumed that all phones had to have a keyboard at the time. Because that was his perception of what a phone was, he couldn't see the change that was coming from touch screens. If you've seen an 8-year-old now and you show them a screen, what do they do first? They touch it. Second thing that he did, he also assumed that there was a pricing band for a phone that you couldn't go beyond. Both of those assumptions constrained him completely to see how the world would change. And that's very common. Most people tend to recruit people in the same business, they tend to walk the same way to work, they tend to look in the same market when they look for inspiration, and that confines them in what they do. And that's a key thing that you look to change as you go through, which most companies don't do. Here's an example. Here's mobile. Mobile is one of those things to talk through. The two things, if you go back 5 years, everybody talked about mobile was mobile advertising or mobile payment. The banks were talking about it, the operators were talking about it, the agencies were talking about it, but where is it? Eventually it started to come in advertising, but not really. And yet, what's the biggest mobile payment capability in America? It's probably Starbucks. It's a retailer, yes? And they do 5 million transactions a week, I think it is. And that's 10% of all transactions in Starbucks being done on a mobile device. Why? Because Starbucks took an area that wasn't theirs, changed their market and changed their behavior. The thing that Starbucks are apparently about to introduce is the ability to pre-order. So they've got a new insight, which is actually what we could sell on is impatience, that I don't want to queue. Now you think what mobile might also do for retail. You've heard of the concept of showrooming, where people actually check out of a shop. You used to get people into shops. Now you want them to stop leaving. So 70% of people in America, when they're looking for a car, will compare prices on the mobile as they go through. Amazon's big objective for its mobile app is to get you as quickly as possible to buy a product and have it delivered to your house. Amazon is really trying to get same-day delivery or delivery within 90 minutes. So that's a change from mobile into retail, into business, into consumers, all in one go. It's not neat, and that's the problem when people think of things like that. Here's another one. I do a fair bit now in the area of medicine, and every mobile health and m-health is a massive change. You take the 80%, I think, of all illnesses are chronic. That means they're not treatable. So what you're trying to do for things like diabetes or heart attacks is to change behavior. Mobile's a great device to change behavior. So I'll give you an example. If you had a heart attack and you're a man and you've had an operation, it's very common that the key reason you'll get another heart attack is because when you get the symptoms, you don't phone the doctor up because you've got ego. What if I remove that? What if the doctor had you wired up so when you had the symptoms, the doctor contacted you? What if you take it one stage further? What if the ambulance just turned up geolocated for you to take to the hospital? And since most deaths are caused because that time between it, it's big data, it's joining it all up, it's a commercial benefit, it's a need, but it wasn't what anybody predicted with mobile. This is a surreal concept, which is true. What if I have a pill that's connected up, that's inside you as a doctor, that's connected up to a little Band-Aid that you see here, that's gone through, that's matched up to my app, so actually I can take it and then remotely the doctor in the hospital can see what I'm doing in terms of my heart rate, my diagnostics, all in one go, so I don't have to go back. Very simple, very straightforward, very disruptive, and happening at a great rate of knots. Mobile has wiped out so many things that people forget about. What about your calculator? That's on your mobile. Remember pagers? If you're my age, you used to have the thing stuck around your bed. What about your alarm clock? You go to a hotel and they say, would you like an alarm call? You go, no, I've got a mobile. It's wiped out PDAs. Do you remember the Palm Pilot? And it keeps on taking these things through and changing things. It's wiped out cameras pretty much. It's pretty soon wiping out videos for most people. And what you've got is, you're seeing mobile doing new things now. We've seen medical, we've seen health. It'll probably be your keys. It's going to be your wallet. Why do I need a translation book anymore when I go through, when actually Google's got something called Google Now, which will literally translate for you, and quicker than you can do it yourself. And on the bottom thing, this is Nest. This is the thermostat. And if you think you want to be good for the environment and save heat, what about the fact that your heating stays on when you walk out? What if your heating turned off when you walked out, or learned when you're in and out and adapted for you, or turned it on when you're coming home? Connected up to your mobile, it will. And Google's bought this company for $3.2 billion. Why? All sorts of reasons, but among the reasons, it understands the data about you that it then can use in a slightly different way. So a key issue that most people have is not only this change, and I've picked mobile as an example, but you can find this in lots of areas, but what happens is that change doesn't come neatly. It doesn't go linearly. We're very good at doing linear predictions. I can probably tell you, excuse me for turning sideways, there are 2 yards to the screen because it's a linear change. When you've got exponential change, which is what happens, things double within a certain period of time. Take this stadium. Imagine this stadium had a drop of water put on the centre of the pitch. There was 100,000 people in it. If that drop of water doubles, and it doesn't absorb into the pitch every minute, so it's after 2 minutes, there are 2 drops, after 1 minute, 2 drops, and after 6 minutes to 16, etc. How long before that stadium is completely full if it's 100,000 and you're in the back seat? You ask most people, they'll say a week. The answer's 47 minutes, because it's exponential growth. That's how things change. More scary, if you're sitting at the back with 43 minutes in, you're talking to your friend and saying there's water on the pitch. Then what happened? Whoosh. And whoosh happens more and more in more markets. And it's dealing with the whoosh, because you can't deal with the whoosh in the last 3 years. You've got to deal with the whoosh when it first starts. Just talk to Nokia, who used to have 40% of the mobile phone market 6 years ago. So some of the stuff I take through when we do the talk, let me just touch through. We do the whole talk about how most companies have a command and control culture. They have a process, they have a way of working, they have departments. Lots of people have targets. And the problem with targets within departments, you might be completely on target, but completely missing the point. So that's one of the big things I talked about, how to break that up. Second thing, which we've just touched on, is the whole idea of trend mutation. And that's just us talking about it, but how you as a business work. And that's being more agile and working in slightly different ways in terms of how you work through things. The third thing to think of is lots of people try and position themselves within a market. It's often much better to try and think how you can reframe the market around you. That's what Apple did when it came into the computers market, when it came into music. That's what Google's doing now. Reframe it. The fourth thing is define the brand from the inside out. If you've got consumers on social media and they all talk to each other, it's not about your words anymore. Everybody who's in your staff, everybody who works in the company's got to know what the brand is. It isn't word, it's behaviour. So increasingly it's about knowing what your mission is and defining it. Google's mission, for example, is to make the world's data accessible and useful for people. It isn't about search. That allows them to do Google Cars, because it's how it can work with cars, how it can work with glasses. And that's another big area that increasingly that lots of people are trying to do, and there's ways that you can do that. Similarly, one of the other key things that mucks people up is they just don't know how to ask a question. Yep. A good basic exercise, and I teach lots of different techniques, is when someone says they've got a challenge, my challenge is a new product, you just ask them why. And they answer the question, why? Because I haven't got any listings in the shop. And you go, why haven't you got any listings? And you might go, I'm too expensive. And you go, why am I too expensive? Because we have a history. So 4 questions on their own could change it. And that's a really important thing, facilitating asking questions. If in doubt, facilitate. Teaching people to work in companies, facilitation is part of the way they work. Most successful companies do this. It's a really different way. It's not having an innovation department, it's having a way of working that accepts that you disrupt yourself. There's a rule called the 70-20-10 rule. You do 70% of your stuff the way you've always done it. You take 20% of the stuff that you do and try and find a way different. You do 10% stuff, you don't know where it's going or what it might be, but hey, let's see what comes out of it. The likes of Google do that, the likes of Coca-Cola. And if in doubt, think like Einstein, which I'll touch on at the end. He's one of my favourites. I used to be a physicist. Here's a good question. What if the question to ask isn't how do I get change? What if the question to ask is when does change happen? And these are 5 areas that you get if you ask the question where change is more likely to happen. They're crisis, they're launches, they're pitches, they're legal change. Someone changed the law on smoking or drinking, for example. Or they're a change in senior management. Most people go yes. But they've all got things in common that you can leverage, and this is what you also do. They all have a fixed deadline. It's not a moving deadline, so you have a fixed deadline. They all have senior management involved at the start and the end. Not in the middle, start and the end. The third thing they do is they all write the brief properly. You'll be amazed how often people innovate off the wrong brief, so you work really hard on the brief. The fourth thing that they do is they don't work in silos, people work in teams. And finally, the thing that they do is brave. You don't try and, if you're ever doing an ad agency, you're doing a pitch, you be as brave as you can be to try and win it. You can leverage all those things in how you work. This is one of the things, excuse the fuzzy picture because it's the one I have at my home. This is a process called Christmas string, where in simple terms you take a problem and in 4 meetings you resolve it. So the first bit at the bottom of the Christmas tree, you define the problem, and then you open up what the problem is, and then having agreed what the areas of the problem is, you then close it. Then having got into 4 or 5 territories, you separately open those up, and then you close it, then you agree what the action areas are joined up, open up, close it, and finally you turn it into a solution. 4 meetings. 4 meetings. If you get the right people around it, you can solve it. And here's an example.